got here, things were already a hair shy of Halloween. Dead empty streets, secret fires, things creeping in the windows.
I feel like Redfall kind of had a lot on its shoulders. This was the first major AAA Xbox exclusive since Halo Infinite, and it's also kind of the first game to really come out of the Microsoft-Bethesda merger. On top of that, Arcane makes some bangers, with 3 really solid Dishonored games along with Prey and Deathloop. And on top of that, Xbox have just kept taking L's, and especially recently with the Activision acquisition getting blocked. However, I'm just gonna say this up front. Redfall falls flat on pretty much everything it tries to do, and like a vampire, it was not ready to see the light. But let's talk about this. Hi guys, DPX here, reviewing today Redfall. Now before we get started, you know what to do. If you like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, or I will suck your blood. Now, let's not pretend that Redfall doesn't get anything right. You know, kind of like how nothing's perfect, nothing is completely, like, devoid of positives. Like, I know I kind of said at the beginning that it falls flat on everything, but I kind of gotta lure you guys in somehow. But starting off with the good, first off, I really like the aesthetic of the game. I'm not talking about the graphics necessarily, but the overall aesthetic to the game and vibe of the environment certainly feels like vampires in a good way. The story concept is also pretty good. The story is about a town called Redfall, which is obviously what the game is named after. It is a town that has been taken over by vampires and all the light has been taken by them. Now our 4 main characters have to stop them and bring light back to this town. That's not a bad idea. And one more thing I want to mention, and yeah, this is really the last good thing I'm mentioning, and that's the music. The music really sets the vibe very well, and some songs just straight up slap. This might be a game where the music is the best part. Now on to the mixed. These are things I can go either way on, or things that are worth mentioning, but I'm not sure if they lean more towards good or bad, so they're going into the mixed. One mixed thing I want to mention is the gameplay. As much bad as there is to Redfall, and we'll get to it, the gameplay really isn't that bad. I mean, it does get marred by technical issues, but at its core, the gameplay's fine, you know? It's under mixed because it is really rather generic, but it's not too frustrating, which is kind of a low bar. Another thing you should be aware of if you play this game is you need a Bethesda.net account in order to play it. And I mean, you cannot play the game unless you have a Bethesda.net account. This is under mixed because making an account is just like making any other account, but it's kind of annoying that it's required in order to play the game, but it's a problem surrounding the game as opposed to a problem in the game, which is why I'm not really holding it against the game. And one more mixed thing, and I feel like I'm going to get some flack for this, but let me explain. This game is on Game Pass. Now, that doesn't excuse the state that Redfall was released in, as people seem to be defending this game because it's on Game Pass. And admittedly, I'm not fuming because I didn't pay $70 on this game because Game Pass lets you get it for free. But that's what Microsoft wants you to think. They want you to give this game a pass because it's on Game Pass. The main reason I'm mentioning Game Pass, though, is because if you have Game Pass, but you still spent $70 on this game, I have a hard time feeling bad for you. This is a game where all the negatives I'm about to list momentarily have been made crystal clear before the game even launched. And if you really wanted to play Redfall that badly, there is a free option. You can make an argument that they should not be charging $70 for this, and you have a point, but I feel like the joke is on you if you actually bought it. Now on to the bad, and oh boy, here we go. Let me refer back to something I said earlier in the video, and definitely did not steal that from a different review. think it might have been IGN's review or something like that. I don't know. But that is, like a vampire, Redfall was not ready to see the light. And in case you somehow don't understand what I mean by that, Redfall is not fucking ready to be released. There are so many bugs and glitches in the game to start with, you know, a lot of texture popping, frame rate drops, and controller issues are just to name a few. There are times where I'm clearly pressing a button, but it just won't work. The AI is so stupid. You can actually, no joke, stand right in front of them and they won't do anything. Hell, you can use the invisible power and they'll completely forget you were even there. And the times the AI does get the better of me, it feels like the game glitched again. I know it sounds like a John, but seriously, when you shoot a vampire and you completely lower their health bar, there is a command that says to stake them, you know, because they're a vampire, to finish them off. However, that command doesn't always pop up, so they just come back, and sometimes that command will never come up for a specific vampire, so you're just running from it the whole time. There is also the fact that Redfall was made primarily with co-op in mind. And I'm just gonna say, that's not a bad thing. But when you play the game in single player, it's honestly really boring, so you might just want to play with friends. But when you play with friends, and you've probably heard about this, but only the host of the game makes progress in the story. Some of the issues with Redfall have to do with the fact that the game was rushed, but I can guarantee you that there are rushed games out there that are, you know, co-op multiplayer that do not have this bullshit. I'm not gonna pretend to know anything about developing games, but that really does sound like a switch that they can just turn on, but forgot to. There's also the story cutscenes. I mentioned the story concept earlier and how it's actually a pretty promising and intriguing concept for a game, and while the story itself isn't really anything special, the cutscenes really bother me. You want further proof that Redfall was just not ready to release, or at least that they half-assed it? The cutscenes are still images with text. This tells me that they didn't even want to animate cutscenes for the game, which, to be fair, if they did and they looked like shit, I feel like I'd be complaining about that, but still. And they want to flesh out this world and give more story, so instead of playing other cutscenes, there'll be moments where you go up to like a sheet of paper and you have to read a bit about the story. And that's not easily, like, everyone knows how to read, but it's not as easily consumable as just a normal cutscene. Another thing worth mentioning is Redfall is also open world, and you know what? It would be better if it wasn't an open world, because it is so empty. Note to video game companies, not every fucking game needs to have an open world, because if you don't put anything in the open world, what's the point? If you have something to add to the open world genre, like games like Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring, go for it. Even games like Sonic Frontiers and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, say what you want about those games and their open worlds, but at least they had something to do in those worlds. But games like Redfall, there's nothing to do. Never mind the fact that open world multiplayer looter shooters are not at all anything like what Redfall is known for, but playing an open world game with nothing in it is almost like watching a comedy that's not funny. It's like, why am I even bothering? And I'm sure you guys were expecting me to mention the performance and how it's at 30 FPS instead of 60 FPS, and I always looked at that stuff as kind of superficial unless it has a major impact on the game. But I'm not a frame rate snob. However, when you have a bullet on the back of the box that says that the game runs at 60, but then have to add a sticker that clarifies that the game doesn't actually run at 60, but will in the future with an update, that proves one thing to me, and that is Microsoft released this game before it was ready, and more frustratingly, they knew it. It's one thing to release a game unfinished, and it's another thing to know it, but publicly and openly admitting that before you even release the game is an entirely separate thing. Redfall feels like an early access game, and you know what? It kinda is when you think about it. And if I'm gonna be honest, I think if this was labeled as an early access game, I might actually be singing a different tune. I mean, it still wouldn't be perfect, and there's still some fundamental issues, but you have a genuine excuse for it to be buggy and glitchy and unfinished, because that's what an early access game is. But even though it's on Game Pass, Redfall is not labeled as an early access game, and is instead labeled as a $70 full-price AAA release, which just feels dirty to me, because not only is that a lie, you can almost see that as a scam. I don't want to go that far, but I won't argue with you. Overall, what happened here? Arcane is a very good developer, Redfall has a promising concept, and it has the backing of Microsoft. Yet to say Redfall falls flat is an understatement. The game is unfinished and they want you to give it a pass because it's on Game Pass, and I love Microsoft, but I can see right through this bullshit. The AI sucks, the bugs and glitches are unacceptable, the fact that only the host makes story progress during co-op is baffling, and the open world is empty, and the game was just not ready. And what pisses me off more is Microsoft flat out knew this and openly admitted they knew this. I'm gonna give Redfall a 3 out of 10. It's not the worst game I've played of all time, but when it comes to a big budget full price AAA commercial release, Redfall might be one of the worst games I've played in a while. So that's my review for Redfall. Here's holding out hope for Starfield. So yeah, anyways, Redfall, what do you guys think about it? Do you guys like the game? Do you guys not like the game? I'm interested to know if you guys like the game. I'm genuinely curious to see if anyone likes this game. But do you guys like it? Do you guys not like it? Have you played it? Have you not played it? And if you haven't played it, do you want to play it? Do you not want to play it? Don't. But anything about the game, let me know down below. Anyways, be sure to like this video, come subscribe, or I will suck your blood.